My name's Steve Mascott. This is Good Morning League fans. You're on rugbyleague.com. And congratulations to Jason Costigan on his first episode of Bush Beat, where he took us all around the eastern seaboard of Australia in sort of 47 minutes, I think it was, if you take out the ads and the music. So great start to Jason. So much happening in rugby league today. The big news is that the Perth Bears are confirmed. All that news footage of people celebrating at North Sydney Leagues Club. We'll discuss that a little bit more. But we haven't got a lot of time today because there is a match on. So the match is Parramatta versus the Dolphins. And it's at CommBank Stadium. And it kicks off at 10 to the hour. So this show will become game day, rugbyleague.com game day at 10 minutes to the hour. Well, dude, this is the way we normally start the show. We normally start the show by talking about birthdays. And birthdays today, there's a big one. One of the great stars of the early years of rugby league, Harold Wagstaff. He was born in 1891 and he died in 1939. Wigan player, one of the greatest ever players in the history of rugby league. So if his family might be listening, I know it's unlikely, but happy birthday to the great Harold Wagstaff. Harry Wells, another great, I use the word great a lot when I do these birthdays, but he was a centre from down my way in the Gong. My uncle used to tell me about him, and he's still with us. He's 93 today, Harry Wells, born in 1932, and played for South Sydney, played for Southern Division, Western Suburbs, played a lot of his football stayed in the bush, which is topical given the show that we just had from Costo. Johnny Graves, another wonderful player for Australia and New South Wales, played his club footy at St George and Canterbury, and also from the southern part of New South Wales. He is still with us too. He is 82 today. Happy birthday, Johnny Graves. Let's have a look at a couple of Morven Edwards, Lythe centre. New Zealand and New Zealand Maori representative, played for Swinton, Leeds, Balmain and Penrith. Morven Edwards, he's 57 today. John Timu, the wonderful rugby union convert who played at Canterbury, also played here in London for the Broncos, 56 today, so he's the same age as me. Who else have we got? It's a big day for birthdays. Frank Puliatua or Pulatua, depending on what side of the Tasman you are from. He's 47 today. Penrith, South Sydney and Samoa. Craig Trindle, not to be confused with Darryl Trindle. Craig Trindle was a forward, I'm pretty sure. Played for Penrith, and he is 46 today. Richie Fayoso, one of the early sort of pioneers of the Tonga Mate Ma, 41 today. Tinaru Arona, Cook Islands International, one of the great Cook Islands players, at 36 today. There's got to be, just going through again. That might pull us up today. Because that's a lot already. So in the next hour, we might speak to Jason Costigan. We've got a new kind of technical setup here where people can dial in. And the good thing about that is that eventually, when I say eventually, I don't mean in the distant future, I mean in the near future, you, the listener, will be able to call in. I'll be able to post a link somewhere and you'll be able to hit the link and call in and share your thoughts. So we'll take a little bit of a break. And then we'll set the scene out at CommBank Stadium. What do you say? So, you're on rugbyleague.com. Not sure what happened there. But we have about 4 hours of straight of exclusive content coming up on the station. So, pretty exciting. We had Jason Costigan's Bush Beat just before Good Morning League fans, which is what you're listening to right now. And then we've got this show. We've got a match kicking off at 10-2, and we'll be with you throughout that game with score updates. So let's take you out to CommBank Stadium, where Parramatta are about to take on the Dolphins. And the teams have been announced. It's 16 degrees out there. The weather is fine. And the Parramatta side is Isaiah Tongi, Bailey Simonson, Will Penasini, Sean Russell, Josh Adokar, Dylan Brown, Mitchell Moses. And then the forwards, we've got Jack Williams, Riley Smith, Junior Paolo, Charlie Geimer, Kitoni Kotonga, Jermaine Hopgood. The bench is Dylan Walker, Luca Moretti, Jordan Samrani, and Matt Dorey. And for the Dolphins, the side is the Hammer, Hamaso Tabuai-Fidow, Jermaine Asako, Jake Avarillo, Herbie Farnworth, Jack Bostock, Cody Nikarima, Isaiah Katoa, Francis Molo, Kurt Donahue, Felice Kafusi, Cooley Finifiaku, Ray Stone, Tom Gilbert, who is captain. The bench is Connie Lemu, Mark Nichols, Josh Kerr, Harrison Graham. The referee is Wyatt Raymond, and the senior review official is Chris Butler. Now, what those team changes mean is that for the Eels, Matt Dorey from last week is in, and Sam Tuivati is out. For the Dolphins, Felice Kafusi and Kurt Donahue are in, and Jeremy Marshall-King and Oren Keeley are out. So really looking forward to this match. It's not a commentary game for us, but it is a game where we can do score updates. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention to you is that we've got an interview coming up before kickoff that Jason Costigan has done with a women's coach from a developing rugby league nation. I'll tell you a little bit more about that after our next break. But that's about it for now. So we'll take another break, and we'll be back with some more rugby league in the build-up, half an hour from kickoff. It's an historic day in rugby league with the Perth are back, North Sydney are back, and I actually remember where I was in 1995 when they announced that there were 4 new teams joining the competition, including Perth. I regard it as one of my happiest days as a rugby league fan. Now, we're going to try to put Jason Costigan to air. Jason, are you reading me?
Steve, loud and clear. Good morning to you. Good morning, league fans.
Wonderful to have you on the show, and great for us to be using this technology a little bit. So we haven't previously had anyone call in to one of our live shows before. So, baby steps. I know it's not something you get excited about if you're a 40-year veteran in the radio business like you, Jason.
Well, it's not 40 years in radio for me. I think I might have told you a while ago that a mutual friend of ours, an old acquaintance, Greg Hendricks, introduced me to radio, well known in Sydney radio, reading the news on Sydney radio many years ago, the late Greg Hendricks. And he said to me, Costo, if you can do TV, I'll teach you radio. And so I took up radio rather late in life, and here we are at rugbyleague.com.
Awesome. So, Jason, do you remember where you were back in 1990? I guess it was 1993 when the then Australian Rugby League, or then New South Wales Rugby League, announced that they were adding 4 new teams, including Perth.
Well, it was actually 1992. So I'm not, very rarely I will question you, and particularly on air, and particularly when we don't talk about it before we come on air. But I'll tell you this much, Steve. I remember very much that Kerry Bowstead, when I was a young reporter in Townsville, a young TV reporter, he went down to Phillip Street, as it was called, place that you would know very well from the days when Ken Arthurson and John Quayle were calling the shots and looking at expansion. Yes, the Auckland Warriors had already got the green light, and there was one more team to come. But as you may remember and would remember, those 3 bids were so good, they couldn't leave anyone out. So they said, we'll take the whole 3. And the front page of my old newspaper, the Townsville Bulletin, with the headline on the front page of the broadsheet, "We're in." And I remember when I was at Townsville Airport on the day after the decision, I think Kerry Bowstead came back the next morning, and we were there with cameras and microphones and grabbing the Pied Piper of the Whitfield Cup bid, as it was called. There was no Cowboys name, just to let our listeners know. The Cowboys name came quite some time later, and Kerry Bowstead came through the gates, or came through the door at Townsville Airport. And I always say to people, with a smile on his face like Luna Park.
So what do you think of the Perth Bears? Are you a fan? Do you think it's going to work?
I've always been a fan. No one needed to convince me of the merits of a team from the mining-rich state of Western Australia, where there's rugby league history with thousands of local juniors and a history of the game, particularly going back to the early days after World War II, the expat population, a lot of people from the eastern states working in the Pilbara on a fly-in, fly-out basis, and the money that Western Australia contributes to the Australian economy. it stacks up. One of the worst decisions, I often tell people, in fact, I spoke to someone before we came on air and before I did Bushbeat, the very first edition of Bushbeat on rugbyleague.com, shining a light on country rugby league, and I said to somebody from overseas, I said, Peter V'landys and those before him, have they got everything right? No. Rugby league's so good in Australia right now compared to the Northern Hemisphere and the disparity. We could talk about that till the cows come home. Have they got everything right here? No, just most things. But one of the things they got wrong was to exclude the Western Reds as part of that peace process that is well documented in your book, Two Tribes and the History of the Super League War and so forth. We should have kept the Western Reds or the Perth Reds in the competition. I remember being in the north of England as a commentator in the second year of Super League when we had the World Club Challenge and the Perth Reds or the Western Reds playing at Don Valley Stadium against Sheffield. We should have kept the Western Reds in the competition and made some harder decisions in relation to rationalisation in Sydney. So I lament the loss of the Western Reds. It's been a long time coming, and I'm absolutely delighted. And I'm particularly delighted for the alienated supporter base that is North Sydney and the Bears faithful. And to see the images of Greg Florimo shedding a tear, as reported in our news on rugbyleague.com, I think that says it all.
Now, Costo, the good thing about us doing this is that this is going to help us with our calling of matches, with one of us at one game and one of us at the other. So it's a fantastic development in our evolution at rugbyleague.com. And I've got this little sort of effects desk here, Costo. And at the end of the show, I'm gonna push the button that's marked cheering. Because I think this is worth cheering for. But the interesting thing you've got in your news bulletin about Luke Keary suggesting that that the transfers within the NRL could work better and stuff like that. He's taken to. Am I to understand he has taken to LinkedIn after he criticised Super League in a Nine podcast?
That's right.
What was the full context of his post there?
Well, I was quite busy in the last couple of hours, as you know, preparing for Bushbeat and getting ready for the opening match for the weekend, the game between Parramatta and the Dolphins, to keep tabs on that, to keep our listeners abreast with our news bulletins, which keeps us pretty busy, both yourself and me. But look, I follow Luke Keary on LinkedIn. I don't often get the chance to read up on this stuff with intricate detail and so forth, but I had a look down and I drilled down into what he said. And to sum up what he said, he went into, it wasn't just a throwaway line on LinkedIn. He basically said that he thought that we should borrow something out of the NFL and have a completely new look to the player transfer window. So it's a story that will continue to follow, and it's interesting that he's come out on the front foot and put his cards on the table here in terms of what he thinks the NRL should do in terms of the player transfer window, because there's so much speculation going on. Instead of us talking about the talents of the players on the field, the new kid on the block, the rookie done good, the veteran that's defying Father Time, we're talking about, will he end up at a club or Club X in, 12 or 18 months' time? I don't think that's healthy for the game. I reckon we should pose a challenge to our listeners. Find a listener who thinks that's a good thing for our game. I think it's one of the things that the NRL doesn't do very well. Most things they do very well. That's one thing they don't do very well. And I think Keary is right in putting this idea forward, basically copying the NFL. And as you say, or as what you're alluding to, it's only a matter of days ago that he was carving up the quality and the standard of Super League and the presentation of Super League. He clearly thinks it's his job, and he has every right to speak his mind. I think a lot of players don't want to do this. I think it's refreshing that Luke Keary, who's been there, done that in the game at various levels, what hasn't he achieved in the game? He's entitled to have his say, and I say good on him.
So, Costo, coming up after the break, we've got an interview you did with someone called Bolu. Now, you sent me an email about how to pronounce it correctly, and well, you can only do that, I guess, if the email includes audio.
I'm going to give it a go now. Fagborun.
But it's Bolu is correct. Bolu.
Fagborun, who played for the Bradford Bulls back in the days of Stuart Field and I think Jamie Peacock and the Volcano, Leslie Vainicolo, and I worked at the Bradford Bulls, but my first meeting with Bolu was actually at Bondi Beach in the last couple of days, and interviewed the Nigerian women's coach. He came to the UK as a 2-year-old, born in Nigeria, fell in love with rugby league, a latecomer to rugby league, as he touches on in this interview. And then I had the opportunity to drop him off literally at Sydney International Airport before his flight back to Heathrow. And he's obviously got plenty of ambition. He's pretty well connected in the game. He caught up with a number of key stakeholders during a 3-week trip down under, going to Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne. He went to Magic Round. He went to, I think, the Anzac Day match at Amy Park involving the Melbourne Storm. He checked out the women's program with Brett Kamali, the man they called Noddy at West Tigers. And so he's got plenty of ambition in obviously trying to get Nigeria, the women's team, through to the World Cup. But they need to come through that qualifying process in Canada later this year. But it would be a groundbreaking moment, I would have thought, for the West African nation, probably comparable to what the Reggae Warriors did in the men's game and getting through to the last World Cup.
Okay, so after this break, Costo, and I pushed the cheer button, it didn't work. Anyway, baby steps. Baby steps.
Baby steps. Good on you, brother.
After this break, we're going to hear from Bolu, then after that, we'll Costo, thanks for joining us, and this is going to be in a podcast, so you don't have to be listening live. Just search Good Morning League Fans or search WLF Kicks on your favourite podcast platform.
Hey, Steve, before we go, just one quick thing. I just got a message from Matty Goodwin, former Panthers legend, on the farm outside West Wyalong, and subsequent to my show, Bush Beat, showcasing country rugby league, I need to let our listeners know that West Wyalong, the Mallee men, they aren't playing this weekend. They have forfeited. They've run out of players. They hope to be back on the field the following week. That's hot off the press. Confirmation coming through from the club president, the great Matty Goodwin. Okay,
after this next break, it's Bolu Fagborun, that's not the way you say it apparently, coach of the Nigerian women's team, talking to our man Costo. Costo, thanks for dialing in.
Good on you, Steve. Well, Bolu, you've been in Australia now for, nearly 3 weeks. As we speak now, you're about to get on the plane to head back to Old Blighty. What an experience it's been for you as the coach of the Nigerian women's side. What are some of the highlights?
Yeah, it's been brilliant, both raising the profile and obviously going on my own coaching journey. It was brilliant. We started with a bit of a welcome event, met the 4 potential Australian Nigerian women who were looking at playing for us in Canada, so that was a brilliant start. We met the representatives from the Nigerian High Commission, the 2 secretaries, so that was brilliant to engage them with rugby league in Australia because they're new in post. For me, I just went on a tour of NRL clubs, both raising the profile in Nigerian rugby league for the women's, obviously touching on the men's as well, and just letting them know a little bit about what we're trying to do in Nigeria. So I visited Penrith, spent time with the Tigers, spent time with Newcastle Knights, then went up to Melbourne, spent time with them, spent time with Gold Coast and Brisbane, and also met up with Tony at Cronulla as well. So it's been a high pace, action-packed visit, it's just been brilliant in terms of both my own education and catching up with people who can advance my thinking in terms of how you prepare for an international tournament, and also how we develop pathways in Nigeria that produce elite athletes.
Now, Bolu, I've been following you obviously on social media. I'm not alone. Some of our listeners would be saying, I know the name. I've been seeing what you've been doing, or they have. You've had more meetings than the Prime Minister, but you mentioned about the 4 girls in Australia, the 4 ladies that are eligible, that are interested, I dare say. Our listeners want to know, have they actually played rugby league? What's their story?
Yeah, so a bit of a mixed batch. We've got a couple who've played 17s and 19s previously, come away from the game a little bit, played at university. So there's 2 who've took half a year off, but they're going to get back into it now. Probably the highest profile one is Anik, who's in the Harvey Norman for West Tigers. So I actually watched her train as well. She looks really promising, very, very athletic. And they rate her highly there, so it'll be very interesting to see how she gets on this year. There's a potential probably for her to play some NRLW games this year. So I'm hoping that she'll lead the line in terms of our Nigerian, Australian players in this country, and then hopefully come out to Canada and help us in the World Series.
Now, for those people not familiar with your story, you were born in Nigeria. You came to the UK as a little fellow, just 2 years of age. You've been back to Nigeria a number of times. People want to know, what's the story with rugby league? I think a lot of people know that the game's played there, albeit at a very basic level. But what about specifically the ladies, the women's game?
Yeah. So the women's game, the men's played their first international in 2019. The women did in 2023, and we'll just keep growing the game. The women's, I think there's 4 teams out there at the minute, expanding to 5. And there's a load of activity in terms of the younger ages in schools and in under 19s programme. But we're really trying to hit it hard in terms of getting young people involved in rugby league. So we're having a big push locally in Nigeria doing that. And these women who are playing the national, for me, are seen as role models. And the women themselves have got a load of clips on when they're going into schools and doing rugby. They're fully embedded, you know what I mean? People won't believe it, but these girls, before they came out to Kenya for the Middle Eastern African tournament, they spent a month in camp, which I don't think I don't think the pros even do. But that's
1 month.
1 month, yeah. That's the level of dedication. So when I talk to people about, you know, I mean, these women are serious, and it's a game changer for them. It's one of the reasons I'm out in Australia, because if they're going to take a month off their life in very tough conditions in Nigeria, let me take a couple of weeks away from my life and see what I can do to help spearhead and create a little bit more noise for them, and improve my own coaching, improve the profile, and see what we can do.
Bolu, I want to ask you about the player or the potential player pool for you and your country. The West African community in London is massive. I think a lot of people know this, and Nigeria is a big part of that. How many girls and ladies potentially could be in that player pool if they're exposed to rugby league? Am I right in saying that there's a lot of Nigerian people or people part of that diaspora that don't even know about the game in London before we talk about rugby league heartland in the north of England?
Yeah, you'd be correct. Yeah. I think recently Adam, who works in London for us in terms of outreach, has spoke about there's quite a lot of women playing rugby union, and there's a couple of others just in the community. So we're one of our jobs is to raise the profile and get them playing rugby league. Because obviously for me it's like the pipeline of people playing regular rugby league will help, who've got the IQ will help, and playing at a standard. I know the Broncos are kicking on with their women's team as well, which gives them also a pathway. So yeah, that's one of the things we're looking at long term, how we can get more of that capital exposure in a big capital city where there is a vibrant African community there.
Can I ask about your own playing background? Tell us about that. Don't be shy. We'd like to know a bit more about you personally, about your introduction to rugby league, and I dare say something that perhaps younger people may be listening to our program on rugbyleague.com wondering, how do I get involved with rugby league? Because you're part, an immigrant family in West Yorkshire, and someone obviously opened a door and you fell in love with rugby league.
Yeah, so I was probably a late arrival to rugby league. So yeah, I didn't start playing rugby league till I was 12, 13, got engaged with it at school. School teacher thought I had some athletic ability, so I joined my local club. Some people know it's in Bradford. It's called Clayton. Spent some years there just getting roughed up with rugby, and I loved every bit of it. Then I joined a club which is a pretty famous club in England called Dudley Hill. Some players have come out of there like John Bateman, so yeah, it's got a bit of a profile. And I signed to Huddersfield Giants from there, even though I was a Bradford lad, and yeah, just worked really hard. I pretty much set myself a target by 18 to try and get myself towards the top of the academy, top of the game, and I had the honour and privilege of having played Super League whilst being at school. So I was still at sixth form. I think it was a day before my last exam. I made my debut against Bradford Bulls, and at the time they were the best team in the world. With Bradford Bulls, out of the Bradford Bulls team that had Fielding, Robbie Paul, Leon Price, Peacock, Anderson, Vinocola. He took a day off my day, which were good. But yeah, I played on the wing, played Super League at Huddersfield Giants, played a handful of games, loved every bit of it, to be fair. There's nothing better than being a professional athlete as a young kid. I then went part-time, played at Rochdale, Sheffield and Batley. And for me, I enjoyed every bit of it, you know what I mean? For me, even to today, I ended up playing with and against some legends of the game, and it's been great for me because when I came out here in Australia, I've been able to touch base with some of them, which again took me full circle back 18 years to be able to spend some time with some of these great Australians that I played with and against.
Now, you mentioned about the World Cup qualifier or qualifiers in North America, and it's in Canada specifically.
Yep. Can
you explain to our audience how that's going to work? It's a pretty simple equation for Nigeria if you want to go to the big show.
Yeah, you're straight into semi-final footy. So we've got Ireland. If we beat them, we then go against the winner of Canada against Fiji. We win that. Then we're coming back to Australia in 26 for the World Cup. So yeah, in a nutshell, we're 2 games away, 2 very difficult games against some experienced teams. I think Ireland are top ranked, but Fiji have 5 or 6 NRLW players, so they'll be of a good standard. But I think the fact that we've all got to go the other side of the world for the game, I think that'll probably be hopefully a little bit of an equaliser, because it'll be pretty choppy in Canada, probably close to the UK temperature and weather. So yeah, it'll be a great experience for the women as a standalone tournament, the World Series, and we've echoed with the women already about just following some of the processes and values we're trying to engage in rugby league in Nigeria and just seeing where we get to with it.
And you have to win both games to get through. That's the simple
reality. We've got to win both games to get that final slot at the 2026 World Cup in Australia and Papua New Guinea.
All right, just as we sum up or wrap up here, what is the takeaway in terms of, for you, the highlight of your trip down under? Because you went to what? Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, lots of clubs, lots of people, well, lots of learning.
Yeah, I would say that. I think for me, one of the big takeaways has been just capturing the minds and hearts of people in Australia who didn't know anything about Nigerian Rugby League. And for me, one of the big things for us is people need to know about us to be able to get the message out to young Nigerians, both in here and in Nigeria and everywhere in the world. For me, some of the coaching things for me has been some of the values and some of the core values of some of the clubs has been really good. I mean, for me, the Penrith and Melbourne and Gold Coast were really keen on the community side of it and the unity. And for me, that's some of the messages that I think resonate, not just with the rugby league community, but the whole community for me in Nigeria. You know, that sort of message, 'cause obviously we're a country that's split with half Christian, half Muslim. So things that unite countries, things that can bring communities together, really powerful message. And I think for me, some of the obsession and the attention to some of the simple processes really hit home at some of these clubs like Penrith who are following a row. Their obsession for the simple things. I mean, there were players walking around with books like they were at university, with notes, writing down things. And so I think it really hit me how much dedication they have for the simplest things in rugby league and getting it right. So for me, it's really made me come home and think we don't need a complicated book for Nigeria. We just need to do the really simple things at rugby and try and do them really well as often as we can in the game. And yeah, I'd just like to give a shout out because I think one of the other things which has started with a guy called Gary Routledge in Bradford who helped sponsor the trips that could go along, like talent lockeries, just because they caught the imagination and the vision we've got in Nigeria for being able to produce elite athletes. And I think that as well in Australia, the people I've spoke to, all the clubs, they really, really resonated with them, the fact that we can produce elite athletes in Nigeria, and what could that do to both what rugby league wants to do globally and what it can do to potentially better pathways in Nigeria, but also potentially producing another 100 elite athletes that could go anywhere in the world and play the game of rugby league. So yeah, no, really enthralled with some of the impact we've had out here. And some of the open arms we've been welcomed with Nigerian Rugby League, and just some of the conversations we've had and with both people in the game and outside the game.
I'll tell you what, you might have a career as a commentator. You can talk, and I dare say it all comes from the passion for the game. That's pretty clear for me to see and hear, and I'm sure our listeners have picked up on that as well. Bolu, great chatting with you. We wish you well on your journey in more ways than one. You're about to get on the plane to go back to Old Blighty. You're a long way from West Yorks, but we wish you well with what lays ahead with Canada and the big picture in getting the women's program firing in your beloved Nigeria. Thanks for your time on rugbyleague.com.
Thanks very much. Thanks so much, Costo. Brilliant. Cheers.
Well, that's it for another episode of Good Morning League fans. It was great to have Costo on the program, and it was great to be able to have people call in, and that means in future you, the listener, can call in live on air. We are 3 minutes into this NRL match at CommBank Stadium, and it's the Dolphins with the ball, and it's currently 0-0 Parramatta and the Dolphins. Speak to you again soon. Thanks for joining us on Good Morning League Fans.